Hey everybody, it's Brent in Central Arkansas. Behind me, I've got a butternut squash I'm working on called Honey Gold. And I just want to give you a brief look at it today in this video, show you what it looks like when it's small, when it gets bigger. I'm going to do some pollinating. It's the only squash I have now, well, the only butternut squash, c.moschata, I have now. So I don't have to worry about it cross-pollinating with some other type of butternut or some other squash. So every one of these are perfectly good viable seeds. As long as they start growing, there'll be good viable seeds in it. So let's take a look at them. For those that aren't following me regularly, this is a butternut squash I'm developing, and I call it Honey Gold. Based on what it looks like when it starts turning, it's really a neat thing. It tastes really good too. But last year, I had a problem with being able to save the seed because it created so many female squash without any male squash that I decided to bring it in over the winter. And it was one plant. So I took that one plant and I divided it into 8 different plants. I rooted it. So I started the tip. I would stick it in some soil. There's a video of it. And once it rooted, which was about 2 weeks later, I'd cut it off, and then I would take the tip again. And anyway, ended up getting 8, and of the 8, 7 survived. And so that's what this is. So we've nearly got not nearly, we probably, yes, we already have over a year's worth of growth from this one specific plant. It's just been divided. So I've got a lot of different stages of fruit here I wanted to show you. We'll start with the most mature and to show you what it looks like. I've got my gloves on because I was messing with tomatoes, and that just leaves marks all over your fingers. So anyway, this is a look at a fruit. Remember, it's all the same exact plant, so the variations are going to be subtle and different, but it's all the same exact plant. So there's one, here's one. Let's go over and take a look at some that are a little further along. You can see one back here, and you can see that it is lighter in color. What happens is, as they get a little older, here's one that's even a little bit younger, they'll start to change to a darker shade. Here's one with a little less consistency. It's got a little bit longer neck due to one of its parents. So that's really neat. So it's got a little variation in the same plant right now. So yeah, that's what that one particularly looks like. Let me see if I can find a little. Here's another one, and here's a little baby. Yeah, that's what it looks like when it's little bitty. And then they start, this one, let me see, let me open this up. Yeah, this one you can see in there that I pollinated this one by hand yesterday just to make sure. There's a male there, and there's a male right here. It's got a little bit of pollen still on it, so I'll use it and try to find a female. Yep, here's one. There's one here. That one I did yesterday behind it. So I'm going to pollinate this one, but if you look, you see fruit, 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 fruit that didn't get pollinated and fell off, fruit that didn't get pollinated. It puts a fruit on at every single node, which is fantastic if you know anything about vining squash or vining butternuts. The productivity is insane. And so it also puts off lots of these little tendrils, and because it's vining, how it can continue to produce is, if it's not grown up a trellis, what'll happen is every place it touches the soil along the vine, it'll set roots rather, and that'll support the overall plant, which will allow it to continue to make lots of beautiful babies. Now at the first, I wasn't getting males, but now I'm starting to get males pretty regularly. And so that's how I've been able to pollinate all of these babies, all of these squash. Butternut is a squash, by the way. I went and grabbed the tripod so I can use my hands in front of you, and so I'm going to pull a male from here. Let's look at this kind of up close here. I don't know how in focus it's going to be, but you can see the pollen is already fallen onto the flower here. Now in the mornings, when these things first open, there's a lot of moisture because of dew and whatnot, so it's clinging to the plant, so it makes this pollen a little clumpy. So you don't want to take pollen first thing in the morning. You want to wait till about 9 to 10 a.m. and that's the pollen's very viable at that point. But once you get after around noon, 11 to 12, it starts deteriorating, and by late afternoon, 4 or 5, you'll be lucky if the pollen's viable enough to even use successfully. So the ideal time to pollinate is going to be in the morning times. So this is a male. A male does not have a baby behind it. A female does. Let me see. I'll go ahead and sacrifice this particular one here just to bring it up close so you can see. You see that? This flower will also get big and open up, and it'll look just like this, except it'll have this little fruit on the back side of it. And that is the baby female. That's actually an ovary. Sort of like us, you know. So within this ovary is, and it's technically a fruit, by the way, if you didn't know that. So inside this ovary are ovules, and ovules are eventually become seeds if they get pollinated. So when I do this action that I'm going to show you and place it on the interior of that flower, which I'll show you in just a minute, it transfers down from inside the flower here, parts into this little baby fruit here, and those ovules get fertilized. Pollination, by the way, is the act of taking the pollen from the male and putting it on the female. That's what pollination is. Pollination does not equate to fertilization. It almost always leads to fertilization, but it doesn't have to. So fertilization is after I'm about to show you. It carries the pollen, I wouldn't say grains, but whatever it is, it transfers down into the ovary and fertilizes those little ovules, and those ovules turn into seeds. They'll grow a hard outer coating, they'll get bigger, the fruit will begin to swell, and that flesh and that energy, as it matures the seeds. And that's the whole purpose of a plant's survival. That's why they do what they do, because they want to generate those little seeds within there. Let me take you over and show you the process. But first, let me put that down. I'm going to show you how I prepare the male flower. So I do what I call pollination ghosts, and that's where I just pull them apart in a couple different places like this. It just gives me a place to hold on to without having little yellow petals thrown all over the place. And I fold them down like that. And to me, it kind of reminds me of a ghost, like on Scooby-Doo floating around. So that's why I call them pollination ghosts. Nobody else on the internet is going to call them pollination ghosts, and that's certainly not the technical term for this process. But that's what I call it. It gives me a good handhold, and I can go around and do what I need to do, and I'm going to do that now for you. So this is the flower up here, and it's out of camera view, but I'm going to bring it down for you. I've carried this vine, you follow the vine rather, over to this flower here, and you can see that this flower is wilty. Look at that, it's just kind of wilted. You know that that's been it was done yesterday, basically. It's been pollinated, but they don't have to be pollinated. They're only good for a day, so they'll start withering after that. This one is still nice and firm and rigid. Let me bring it down for you. Here's the same flower I was looking at, the female. You'll see back here that there's a tendril that's grabbed on to the trellis here, and there's a broken one here, and that's because this vine had attached in a few different places. But once I get through pollinated, I'll stick it back up because we want it to grow up and across the trellis. But for now, I just popped off a couple of these little tendrils here so I could bring it down to show it to you. Okay, this flower here normally would be wide open, but it's late morning. It's already starting to, I guess, wilt, degrade, but it's still viable. So what I'm going to do is gain access to it. So let me put the pollinating ghost in my mouth and pull this apart so we can do what we need to do. All right, now that I've done that, I've exposed the female parts here, and you can see that the female has multiple arms, I guess you'd call it, and the male only has one. The male is covered in pollen. You'll be able to see that transfer of pollen here, but the female, you'll see that nothing's coming up on my hand, but it's got not a stickiness, but kind of a stickiness to it. So when I put this on that, it grabs a hold of it, and it creates or releases hormones up the style to the little fruit there. So anyway, let's go ahead and do that now. So if you're going to do this, especially if you're going to pull the petals off, you need to be careful because the flower will separate from the little baby fruit really easy in a lot of cultivars. And I've been doing this a long time. I know which cultivars, also known as varieties, I know which varieties separate easier, so I know how delicate to be. And this particular one's pretty tough, so it'll take a lot of abuse for it to break off. So anyway, let's get to pollinating. So you just take the flower here, or the male part here of this male flower, and you rub it on there like this. Now the bees, there's not a lot of pollinating bees over here where I'm at behind my shed. They just haven't found it. The ones that are here are the big wood boring bees. And they can do this too, but they're not as effective as honeybees or other types of bees. So just take and I rub all of that male pollen off. Let's see if I can get a little bit on my finger here so you can see that. Hopefully you can see that yellow. That yellow is a beautiful male piece to the pollination equation. That's the part they play, this particular flower. So a bee will come in here, and they're just the greatest insect in the world, in my opinion. They just go from flower to flower to flower to flower to flower. So this, if there were bees here, they would be actively on this flower. You would see it would come and land there. It would play around with it, get all over it, and it'll have this male pollen all over it. And it'll just spread that on there, and then it'll take off. And 10, 15 seconds later, another one will come on and just be all over it. So in other words, pollination is improved quite a bit when you have bees because they're constantly bringing pollen to it and rubbing all over it and stuff like that. And so we want to kind of emulate that as much as possible. So we've got a lot of pollen. We took all the pollen, or almost all the pollen, off of this, and we're just going to sit there and we're going to rub it. Now what I'm doing is the pollen is transferred to it, but I'm also, for lack of a better term or phrase, I'm rubbing it in. So I want this to be successful, and I'm going to emulate a bee just touching the dickens out of it all over. And there may be a physiological part on this that it plays a part. I'm not 100% sure, but it may be the touching that also does it. The plant can detect whenever something is on top of it and doing this number to it, because that's how it's done with bees. They're on it all the time. So I'm thinking maybe this little thing is saying, hey, it's time. It's time. They're all over us. Let's do this. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm making it think that it's time to do this, because in reality it is. It's just what is known as hand pollinating. If it is, let me touch the back of the camera to bring it back. If this pollen came from this exact plant right here, this male flower came from this exact plant, it's called self or selfing, and that is self-pollination. Self-pollination means that the same exact plant, which has the same exact genetic makeup, is pollinating itself. If it's pollen from another plant, I had to put another battery in. It's good old GoPro. Wonderful camera. It creates great video, but the battery is shit. So anyway, but if the pollen, if I had pulled this off of another plant, another type of MICROGREENS, and another variety of butternut, for example, and I did the same exact process, that's called cross-pollination, because it was crossed with another variety. So you got self-pollination, you got cross-pollination. That's pretty much it. I'll take this and I'll put it up here. I wanted to introduce you to, I don't want to break this vine, so I'm going to just put it through a little higher. Look at that, one of the little babies popped off. Anyway, this thing produces so many fruit that doesn't matter. I'm not going to lose much production, if any. So anyway, yeah, what was I saying? I wanted to do an introduction into this squash, which is butternut, which I think is going to be a really exceptional one. And eventually I'm going to release it for anybody that wants it. So yeah, this is honey gold butternut in the plant breeding process. My name is Brent. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please subscribe, like, comment. I really enjoy talking to you guys. I love your opinions. I love answering questions. And yep, until the next video,